có nghĩa là tôi chọn với mình muốn vừa tôi sẽ muốn vừa bạn بس اللي تكون صفية ولا بالله يعني
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear well. I am Veronica Shaw. I am the Vice President for Food and Nutrition Program in the Global Health Advocacy Incubator. Welcome and thank you for joining this webinar. And welcome to the launch of this report, Sweetened Profits, the Industry Playbook to Fight Sweetened Beverage Taxes. In the framework of the food policy program, funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies, and in collaboration with other global and local partners, the incubator supports locally led advocacy campaigns today in 21 countries across the globe, including Latin America and the Caribbean countries, Africa, and Asia. From these 21 countries where we work, we support sweetened beverage tax campaigns in 12 countries. Advocacy efforts are critical to move forward with policy change, to put the issue in the public agenda, to support decision makers and champions in the government to move forward with the health policies, also to develop movements and civil society coalitions. And this is related with our focus today to expose and counter and mitigate industry interference that is acknowledged as the main obstacle to move forward with food policies across the globe. Why the monitoring of the industry and the countering the industry is important? Because of that, because the industry deploys a very comprehensive and systematic strategy across the globe to oppose or undermine the effect of these policies. This report we are launching today is one report as part of a series of reports published in the last 5 years by the Incubator, in which our team, in collaboration with other partners, describes, analyze, and evaluate the industry global trends that oppose different food policies. So we identify an industry playbook that is the same across policies and across countries. The previous reports were focused, for instance, in front of package labeling or marketing restrictions, among others. And this one is focusing in the opposition of the industry in sweetened beverage taxes. Why these healthy taxes are so important? Because the sweetened beverages are acknowledged and recognized as a main driver of NCDs, non-communicable diseases like diabetes, obesity. The obesity epidemic is really harming health, economies, and sweetened beverages are an important cause of these diseases, heart disease, for instance, and others. But there is not only a huge harm for health, there is also a huge harm for the economies because the sweetened beverages increase health costs, but also they replace the consumption of real food like fruits and vegetables, particularly in the most vulnerable groups, families and children that are also this sector, the most vulnerable population who suffer the higher burden of NCDs. Sweetened beverages also impact the environment through plastic contamination or excessive use of water, among other causes. So the design of effective taxes, not any tax, effective taxes to reduce the consumption of sweetened beverages are effective measures to protect the right to health and to improve the quality of the diets. So the goal of the report we are launching today, this resource will help decision makers and civil society organizations and other advocates with critical information to help them anticipate and counter the industry interference they could face in the process for sweetened beverage tax policy in their countries. By understanding all these tactics, governments and advocates can identify effective ways to anticipate and counter them and protect the policies. So finally, what I want to do is to thank, on behalf of the incubator, to all of you first for being here today with us, our members of the team that put together and developed this report with a huge collaborative effort, to our local partners that are working across the globe, leading the efforts at the country level and inspiring all of us with the amazing work they do, especially the 3 local partners we have today in this great panel, sharing the experiences of their countries. We will have today a panel with representatives from Colombia, Nigeria, and Pakistan. I will introduce them later. And last but not least, I would like to thank Bloomberg Philanthropies for their generous support for the food policy program. To finish this, I would like to mention that you can see a questions and answer button in the screen, so you can introduce questions after the presentation of the report and the panel discussion with our panelists. There will be a questions and answer section, so please feel free to put questions in the chat. And I also want to let you know that you have a simultaneous interpretation in Spanish and Portuguese, so you can also click there to hear in the other languages. So thank you everyone again, and I want to give the floor to my colleagues, Lorena Ibarra and Marta Janet Sandoval from the Global Health Advocacy Incubator, to present the report they led. Lorena Ibarra is a senior advisor leading the industry interference strategy across the globe for the food and nutrition programs in the incubator. And Marta Janet Lore has a long experience of more than 10 years working in advocacy efforts in the incubator. And Marta Janet Sandoval, Marta is an economist. She is member of the industry team in charge of the monitoring and analysis of the industry trends across the globe, but also she is supporting the taxation campaigns across the globe as part of the team of the incubator. Lorena and Marta, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Veronica, for the introduction. I am Marta Sandoval. Today we will discuss the key findings from the industry playbook to undermine SSB tax. These findings come from the Global Health Advocacy Incubator monitor of the industry global effort against SSB tax from January to September 2023. In this conversation, Lorena and I will be presenting these main findings. The next slide, please. The report identified tactics used by corporate actors and big soda to block SSB tax. Although time is limited to cover all the key insights, but we have enough time to present the elements to understand why corporate behavior to undermine SSB tax are part of playbook that the industry used to avoid public policies to reduce the consumption of product harmful to human health and the planet. This action also affect the government capacity for guarantee their obligation regarding the human rights to food and health. Um, Big Soda aggressively opposed SSB tax worldwide by making deceptive economic threats and use other strategies to block SSB tax advocacy efforts. This report highlights several actions and narratives used by the industry and the examples at the country and global levels were classified under 5 strategies used by the industry. The strategies are the first, proposing weaker taxes tailored to favor industry interests at the expense of public health. The second strategy is threatening and challenging governments that had passed SSB tax. The third strategy is delegitimizing evidence to distort perception about SSB tax. The next strategy is the industry stigmatizing SSB tax through economic arguments. And finally, the industry exploiting vulnerable population and environmental concerns to avoid the SSB tax. The next slide, please. With this approach, in the strategy 1, Big Soda has shifted their strategy from outright opposite SSB tax to supporting weaker tax designs that favor the Big Soda interests. As more governments implemented the SSB tax due to public pressure, the industry now advocates for minimal standards and for SSB tax that had minimal impact on public health. By doing this, the industry claims to be part of the solution. For SSB tax to effectively improve public health, it's necessary increase prices. It's necessary to apply the tax to all unhealthy drinks, including those with non-sugar sweeteners. However, Big Soda promotes weaker taxes, as seen in Peru and Colombia, where industry could exclude drinks from the tax. In other cases, such as Vietnam and Ireland, the industry achieved to exclude products like sport drinks. At this point, a question I would like to ask Lorena is, what is the industry trying to achieve with this new approach of supporting weak tax policies rather than opposite all taxes? Or what is the industry looking for?
Yes, thank you, Martika. This is a great question given all the challenges that the different countries and advocates that are around the world are facing. So we're seeing this trend of stop blocking the policy to start supporting the policy by weakening, as Martika already mentioned, the technical standards. And this definitely goes into how the industry is protecting not only the ultra-processed product, but also their image and their brands across countries. And this is specifically important to them as they are trying to position a global agenda around the concept that corporations have called positive nutrition. And some of you in your countries, those advocates that are pushing for this policy in country, you will have heard maybe the industry saying, well, there are not bad or nor good products or ingredients. It's just food that is products that is there that are there for you to consume. So it's not bad, not good. And they are also trying to highlight the positive elements or ingredients that some of their products have. So this is leveraging the image of ultra-processed products, in this case of sweetened beverages, that actually are damaging the health and the planet. And they're also trying to mask the unhealthy nature of these sweetened beverages, Martika.
Thank you, Lorena. Thank you for this explanation about the real intention of the industry. The next slide, please, is the strategies we are about to describe with this slide support what you have just explaining now, no? In fact, with strategies 2, 3, and 4, the industry aims to weaken the support and implementation of sugar sweetened beverage tax through a combination of legal challenges, the limitation of evidence, and economic stigmatization strategies. Or this word is complicated. Indeed, with the strategy 2, the industry claimed irregularities in legislative mechanisms or violations of the trade norms. For example, in Spain and Colombia, we saw lawsuits against the SSB tax, the industry claiming failures in the legislative process or negative impacts on the economy. This legal action aimed to undermine government authority and prioritize private interests over the public interest. And second, the industry delegitimize evidence through research funded by corporation and promoting alternative solutions like self-regulation, and the industry question the validity of the evidence supporting the implications the SSB tax. In one, for example, and globally, also alternatives such as educational programs and individual behavior change have been argued. This approach is to divert attention from effective measures and also protect corporate interests. Finally, we observe economic stigmatization strategies. The industry creates narrative of economic harm to generate fear and rejection toward SSB tax. The industry claims that the SSB tax will lead the factory closure and reduce investment and use losses. And in countries like Nigeria, Vietnam, and Pakistan, the industry has warned about negative economic consequences from job loss to impacts on the overall economy. With this overview, Lorena, what do you think about this industry agenda? What is the real protecting? What is your thoughts about this?
Yes, Martika, so based on the results that you shared with us, it is clear how the industry is trying to protect their place in the policy-making table. So in those cases or those countries that have this measure or these advocacy efforts, they are trying to guarantee a seat in the policy-making table, but the most concerning aspect of this searching by the industry is how they weaken and put at risk government authorities. So creating doubt over the legislative process, over the policy process, and they are also putting at risk and weakening democracy, how decisions are being made by a state with all of the challenging threats that you mentioned in strategy 2 for the SSB tax specifically. And they have also created this imaginable sphere of how multi-stakeholderism is key in this process, how they have to be on the table because they sell themselves as an important and key actor to providing a solution to a problem that they created.
Thank you, Lorena. In this way, finally, today also we face a strategy aimed at diverting attention from the real issues related to public health and social justice, the exploitation of vulnerable populations and environmental concerns by the SSB industry to avoid the SSB tax. In summary, the tactic of the sugary beverage industry is to use concern for vulnerable population and environmental issues as a shield to avoid regulation and avoid SSB tax that could mitigate the negative impact of their products. In this way, the industry claims that the SSB tax is regressive to low-income households. For example, in Ghana, the Food and Beverage Association argued that the tax would make juices, packaged juices, and for double for children, who are their main consumers. In Mexico, for example, the National Association of Producers of Soft Drink and Carbonated Waters say that the taxes recommended by WHO will place an additional burden on low-income families. This strategy has a strategic effect. For one side, the strategy undermines the legitimacy of evidence showing the harm caused by sugary drinks, and the other side present the SSB tax is or as unnecessary. With this, maybe now here I would like to ask Lorena, what is the real intention of the industry?
Yes, Martika, thank you. So with these programs that we normally see under corporate social responsibility programs by corporations, we've seen how they are deepening and positioning very strongly the corporate diets, ultra-processed products, and sweetened beverage as a fundamental product of the nutrition of low-income families. So the question here is, then low-income families don't have the right to feed themselves in a proper way with nutritious and real food. And also how they take advantage of those vulnerable conditions to build a long-term brand loyalty to the brand. And that includes all of the products in the chain that they have. So Martika, based on this conversation, I think that we can move into how we envision this as part of the food and nutrition program within the Incubator, Global Health Advocacy Incubator. So what we want to share today also is what the industry really wants behind of all of these actions. So the playbook, the taxonomy that we've been working on is, first of all, there is a clear intention of protecting the reputation of the brand and the product through commercial and financial standings. How corporations, through corporate washing or corporate brand washing, they are trying to achieve loyalty from different causes, different gender approaches, and also environmental and health conditions. The second category of our taxonomy is how they want to influence regulations at the different levels, multilateral bodies, regional authorities, national authorities. And this is specifically clear when we see that they are trying to guarantee that the normative frameworks favor the growth of their agribusiness, and how they are also not only avoiding regulations, but also making regulations tailored to their economic and business needs. The third category of our taxonomy is related to how they really have this narrative and discourse of the importance of the freedom of choice, when they do know that all of the responsibility of the burden that we are facing currently in terms of chronic diseases, for instance, obesity and overweight, lay on their shoulders because of the dangerous and hazardous products that they are producing. They are not recognizing their responsibility, and that's why the healthy lives narratives, healthy lifestyles is so convenient for them. The fourth category is how they imply that the products contribute to the solution of any problem that you may have. Hunger, nutrition, environmental issues, and how they exaggerate the UPP or the SB characteristics, and how they are also trying to implement this positive view around those products. They hate the ultra-processed product concept, of course, so they are hiding that under the processed products. So it is also very important for us to be very specific on the ultra-processed products, considering sugary beverages as one of those products. And also how they are buying through these products, like the silence and other aspects of their damage. And with the last one is attacking public health policies through legal strategies. How through these they are questioning authorities, they are questioning everything that is public, government, civil society organizations that are free of conflict of interest. And this all goes into, this is a global strategy. This is a global playbook. And the reason you see here tobacco, alcohol, and other food policies on the table is because this is a playbook that you can apply to any of their food policies that you are advocating for. But if you happen to be working on other issues like tobacco control, consumption, alcohol reduction, or even environmental issues, if you apply this taxonomy to those companies, those corporations, you just need to change the name of the corporation, and this will apply perfectly to the work that you are doing as an advocate. So with this, Betty and Martika, over to you, Martika, Vero, so that we can hear from our country invite.
Thank you so much, Lore and Marta, for the great presentation. I invite the audience to read in detail the report that summarizes dozens of examples in more than 25 countries across the globe through a methodology that documented all these examples applying this playbook that could be reduced to 5 strategies because, as we mentioned several times in the presentation, the industry deploys a global strategy. No matter what is the policy, what is the country, what is the culture in the region, the strategy is the same. With that, I have the honor to introduce the first of the panelists. I am going to introduce Akimbode Matthew Oluwafemi, who is the Executive Director of Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPA, in Nigeria, an NGO that works to advance human rights, challenge corporate abuse of natural resources, and build community power for inclusive development and participatory governance. Mr. Oluwafemi is involved in various capacities in public health policy campaigns in Nigeria and in the African region. They include tobacco control, trans fat regulation, sugar sweetened beverages, and most recently, salt reduction initiatives. He's the maiden winner of the Bloomberg Philanthropies Award for Global Tobacco Control, Global Award for Tobacco Industry Monitoring. So the floor is yours, Bode, and very excited to have you here today with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vero. I'll quickly be running through how the industry has been undermining SSB tax policy in Nigeria. And because of our time, I will broadly speak to their deceptive marketing, manipulation of public narratives, and attempt to undermine public policy. The Nigerian government in 2021 introduced a 10 liter on excise duty on SSBs. And since that time, the industry has engaged in diverse tactics to pressure that tax should be stopped. And I must quickly say that Nigeria ranks the 4th global consumption of SSB in the world, consuming about 38.6 million liters per day. What we've discovered is that we can only, engage in effective counter advocacy of the industry if we effectively and proactively monitor and expose the industry. And with that, our advocacy will be evidence-based. What we've discovered is that immediately that this tax was introduced, the SSB industry engage in diverse marketing to show that after all, their product is not as bad as we think. So they've been extremely proactive in their marketing strategy. This is one of the latest innovations that Coca-Cola, as you can see, currently launched across major cities in Nigeria. One thing which you clearly say here is that this particular advertisement say it all. It says camera eats first, burger, fries, ice cold Coca-Cola, a recipe for wonder. So basically, they are now making the products to be more attractive, and I changed that recipe for wonder to recipe for death. That's actually how they are marketing. They are engaged in a lot of false health claims. Now they speak, a lot of SSB in Nigeria, vitamin drinks, some even are telling you about what nutrients that they have. And most importantly is that there is a huge pop environment in Nigeria. And anytime there is a policy debate in Nigeria, the biggest population you can mobilize either for yourself or against are the youth. And the best the industry could do was to create innovative programs, sponsoring youth camps, sponsoring youth competition, and the rest of them. And of course, these we eventually discover in terms of digital media response to the tax by quite a number of youths. But how did we respond to this? Was that we engaged in huge media campaign, we engaged in digital media campaign, we made it very clear that SSB are sugar-coated, and regardless of how nice they may be to the camera, from their marketing tactics, they cause deaths and diseases. We made it very clear that regardless of their claims, they have no nutritional values. But most importantly, since they are targeting the youths, we created a lot of programs that specifically targets the youths. We did what we call the Sip Smart Challenge. We started in 2023. We've just finished this 2024. It's a huge digital media youth-led advocacy program. And then recently, we've also launched a team of volunteers from across Nigeria that we call the LD Food Policy Advocacy Vanguard. And this team of volunteers cuts across the entire 37 states of the country on their own, embark on advocacies themselves as a counter to the attempt by the industry to mobilize the youths against the tax. One thing that the industry used so extremely, at a very large extent was to manipulate the public perception of the tax. So Nigeria is passing through economic problems. And so the word tax in itself creates some level of fear among the people. And so the industry jumped on this with a lot of media appearances about how this tax is going to hurt the economy, how it's going to cause job losses, how it's going to make them shut down their factories. It is anti-people and the rest of them. And you could see from here, new sugar tax, a wrong step in the right direction. Why proposed tax is dangerous. In fact, is harsh and dangerous. So in order to counter those appearances in the media, we recognize the fact that we also must give knowledge to the people in the media. And so we train and equip journalists and made them our allies. And we just didn't do one training. We looked at where in Nigeria we have locations that we call the media ops, Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. And we gathered journalists together. We most importantly educate them about how to monitor industries and how to write stories about industry conduct, about how the industry is manipulating the media themselves and how they are using the media to market and to, in order to manipulate and deceive the people. We did not only now got massive reportage of, supportive reportage from the media. We also, when the industry started using false science, because they also have their so-called false researchers who are churning out false data and the rest of them. We also got, scientific articles published in journals in Nigeria to counter some of those things that they were doing. But most importantly, is that when we started this advocacy, the industry were going to a lot of places with data and materials that are one-sided, and we were challenged to produce evidence. And so we had to come up with this economic study that actually looked at the public outcomes and economic outcomes of SSB tax. And this in itself was to show the fact that, yes, we even have 10 naira per liter in Nigeria, but this is a far cry because it is not adjustable to inflation. And so nobody should even be talking about removing the tax. We hand out this study, which is online for whoever is interested, to policymakers, the media, journalists, and this also was used to generate a lot of reports to counter the industry. I also speak to how they also attempted to use, to eventually get the policy out, which they've not succeeded. And the biggest institution that they've used, because in Nigeria, you won't see Coca-Cola. I'm not sure we've seen Coca-Cola or PepsiCo and the rest of them, speaking directly against the tax. Rather, they use the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria. The Manufacturer Association of Nigeria is supposed to be a credible institution that brings manufacturers together, engages with government in order to, seek support of government and work with government officials. But rather, on this side of the SSB industries, and NASIMA, which is the commerce and industry, they work hand in hand. When they were arranging meetings, of course, they were also conducting media works and the rest of them. And what they basically are saying was that will hurt the industry. One interesting thing that they've also said was that it was going to hurt the small and medium scale industries. But one thing people need to know in Nigeria is that the SSB industry in Nigeria is dominated by the big corporations, the PepsiCos, the Coca-Colas of this world. And what did we do? We think that we should always meet the industry street for street when it's about rally, media for rally when it's about rally, science for science. If they are advertising their for science, we should also give them, the real science, but also meet them at the policy table of senior government officials. So what we've done was also to take the battle to very senior government officials. And one key thing that we did was to get the Nigerian government to create a multi-sectoral ad hoc committee on SSB tax. So we've seen trends in Nigeria where the health ministry or MDAs under health will be supporting a pro-health initiative, and then we have other sections of the government saying different things. Now, this multi-sectoral committee brings everybody in government from these pictures here. They are all from different agencies, ministries of government under one roof to be able to sit down and discuss about the SSB tax. Of course, we also met with federal agency, the Consumer Protection Agency in Nigeria, which is extremely powerful. They've acted so strongly on tobacco control, and we got we got their commitments, and they are actually also championing this. But in Nigeria, religious leaders also plays very prominent role. This is Reverend Father Kuka, whoever is conversant with happenings in Nigeria. We also met very top religious leaders to be able to drum support for the SSB tax. And again, we also met with the Minister for Health. We met with senior lawmakers. That is the chairman of the House of Rep Committee on Health Institutions, and then Senator Banigo, the Senate Committee on Health. Lastly, the federal government created an institution for fiscal policy and tax committee. We also went there because we know the industry went to him, even when we were not very sure. Sometimes we need to talk to some of the government officials and begin and take your battle to them. So that's what we have been doing to counter the industry. And that's why till today, that tax is still in existence in Nigeria, contrary to what the industry wants and their strategy. So in a nutshell, what we've done, we did a lot of press events, we wrote petitions to government agencies, we wrote opinion articles, lots and loads of media, youth-focused advocacy. We've done rallies because we have a very short time, top-level engagement, top senior government officials, policy brief, religious leaders. We are evidence-based and extremely huge on digital media advocacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akimbode, for this amazing presentation that is inspiring. And I want to highlight from your presentation that you talk specifically about deception and manipulation. That are key words to express what the industry does everywhere through different strategies, deceptive marketing, false science, but deception and manipulation and how they are targeting youth are very important messages you are mentioning. And also I want to highlight the fact that you talk about how the industry not necessarily is talking openly. It's not just Coca-Cola or other enterprises or Pepsi or others talking, opposing explicitly. They are working through multi-stakeholders, corporate platforms where voices many times are other corporate actors. So it's very important when we monitor the industry that we have this comprehensive concept of corporate stakeholders and these multiple stakeholders platforms. So with that, and we will have the opportunity to discuss later and to answer questions. I will introduce the second panelist. I have the honor to present Mr. Sanaullah Guman, a graduate of the University of Punjab, that began the career in 2002 as the Director of Operations in the Pakistan National Heart Association, PANA. Sanaullah serves as the Executive Council member of PANA, a core committee member of Heart House, and holds various advisory roles. In recognition of his contributions to philanthropic work, he received the Pride of Performance, the Presidential Award from the President of Pakistan in 2021. Congratulations for that award and the amazing career. It's an honor, Sanaullah, to introduce you. So the floor is yours. Can you hear me? Sanaullah, can you hear me?
Yeah, he's trying to join actually. He's traveling, so I'm sure soon he will join.
We can give him a minute.
Yeah, I think in a minute or two he will join.
What we can do, we can invest the order. So we give some time to Sanaula until he can connect. I am going to move to the other member of the panel. So I will introduce now our Colombian colleague. The next panelist will be Santiago Salinas. Santiago is the advocacy coordinator lawyer at the Colectivo de Abogados y Abogadas José Alvear Restrepo Cajar in Colombia. He began his professional life in the Congress of the Republic, where he served as advisor on issues of health, education, human rights, and peace, served as advisor in the process of legislative implementation of the peace agreements. So, Santiago Salinas, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. It's an honor to share this morning with all of you. The idea of this presentation is such a challenge with this antecedent of the people who has present before me. The idea is to present how we did to deal with the industry playbook against healthy taxes in Colombia. And to summarize, it's how we answer to the local manifestations of these strategies that Lorena and Marta has presented and that Akibonde has presented, how it materialized in his country. Next slide. The main challenge, main challenge that we found at the beginning of this discussion was how not to lose the focus on the crucial issues that were behind this apparent technical discussion of healthy taxes. How to keep the focus on what is relevant despite the technical factor. It's important to say that before this discussion, we had all the accumulated experience of previous law on frontal loading. So what the issue in Colombia has an important impact. It could be seen the impact of ESSD on the population. It's high, and the impact on chronic disease associated to the consumption of this kind of beverage. It's important and has a great, enormous burden on public health. So what we did was incorporate, next slide. What we did was to incorporate some other data to claim the origins and relevance for the disheartened ones, the ones that we can convince just appealing to the right of health and the benefits of a taxes or an initiative that will protect public health. And the impact on GDP was one of the arguments. It seems to exemplify how was the impact on the financial status of the nation. But this was put together with other arguments as the authority behind the recommendation, the WHO, and tons of data of investigation without conflict of interest. That this was not alone. It was not enough to have the reason. And especially with policymakers, we need something else to be to convince. So we deliver a process to monitor and list the main arguments of industry, which allow us to participate, anticipate, and prepare the catalog of crucial messages that we must position from different voices. A polyphony of the same message was one of the lessons learned of the previous law or the previous struggle to push forward the law on frontal loading. Next slide. So back then, when the first initiative started, we discovered the necessity of a strong coalition because it was crucial to have a diversity on the language and public reach if we want to sound convincing to the policymakers. That will make us easier to tackle public opinion barriers. We found a lot of barriers that it depends of the one who were talking and not exactly of the argument we were talking. So a coalition allows us to overcome all these obstacles. And next slide. When we pushed this initiative, we found a strong resistance, an overwhelming declaration of conflict of interest in the first attempt to push forward this initiative on taxes. So we take note as the lawyers collective, and not only we take note, we take action too. We decide to tackling the conflict of interest as a barrier and becoming an opportunity. We asked the question on how to galvanize this regime of conflict of interest in the quickest way possible. So we decided on the strategy to push a legal strategy that allows us to endure, to galvanize the regimen of conflict of interest, to put some pressure on this sector of the Congress that has this an incredible amount of funding of SSB taxes and ultra-processed food companies' money on their pocket for their campaigns to their position. So in 2022, next slide, we have a second chance with a new Congress and a new tax reform, of course. This reform will become a law, the 2277 law of 2022. So next slide. During the discussion, and here is the core of this issue, during the discussion of the tax reform, we face three kinds of strategies, or more accurate, three materializations of the strategies that the industry has deployed in the country, taken exactly from the playbook. The discursive one, where they had a incredible, well-established framework of food to their process. They had achieved their products were cataloged as food. And they play with this idea of the food safety and the easy to consume these products. So it was essential in this dispute to break down the narrative of food bounded to UPCs. Part of this dispute was to concentrate on the healthy impacts, on public communication, the healthy impacts, and to name these taxes as healthy taxes, because that was what we were disputing. Not the taxes part, but the health. It was what must become the core of the discussion. And that allows us to push out of the discussion the idea that these UPCs were food. So we repeated and repeated everywhere and repeated every time with this polyphony of voices that we have to position the idea that we were trying to protect health and trying to diminish this resistance on public opinion against the taxation of food. It was an intentional and explicit effort and well-based accusation against UPC to make people sick. The vulnerability of children and the social cost was one of the arguments that support this idea. After we cracked the image of this product out of the food frame, the discussion on public health and tone changed. We found a synergy between the necessity of the government of resources and the necessity of society of protection through the tax. This synergy helped us to shortcut the path, pointing out exactly the focus of public opinion on the overweighted budget of the UPC producers. So that was what we did to advance so quick in this. During the process, we faced, as Marta and Lorena have said, economic panic, disappellation to the poorest of the society, and this legitimacy of this claim of legitimacy to participate on regulation. To name the conflict of interest on this participation, it was crucial to crack down this strategy. Next slide. To condensate the discussion, they operate the delusion, changing the name of the article. So one important strategy that we deployed to counteract this delusion of the initiative, this weaker strategy to change the capacity of the North, it was to set the discussion through the gold standard proposals. What does the evidence without conflict of interest recommend, and set that as a standard to encourage the discussion to this gold standard? To deal with the delay and the derogate initiative, it was a public pressure strategy, as Akivan has shown. Next slide. So one of the tools that we used through this monitoring process was to build a funding profile to identify where the resources of the policymakers come from. That allows us to split the strategy in two kinds of actions: the legal, to a strong emphasis, denounce and expose this conflict of interest through this funding profile that allows us to understand how the interest was projected. One interesting thing that we learned about interference is that this does not support the light. When you put it in public light, it becomes weaker. It gives some shame to keep acting through this way. Next slide. In the legal strategies, we paid these constitutionality demands, but we already know through international exchanges as this that this is going to happen. So it gave us a margin of anticipation. We focus not in the threat that it supposed the legal issues, but we focus as a chance to progress. How we gain in this discussion a strategic declaration of the constitutional forms. How we make that the judicial operator disclaim the nocivity of the product as SCVs and the limits of commercial activities when face human rights, in this case, the health. This helps us to align the species and to align the speech and align the global allies to express the nocivity of the products and to advance in the protection of health. Next slide. All in all, the industry do not give up. So in January of this year, they have precipitate declarations talking about the effects of the taxes. This declaration is paradigmatic of the line that they are using, because they are trying to put conclusion after a half month after the approbation of healthy taxes, where they clearly say that has a great impact, a negative impact, and this they captured through the reported feeling, and they persist on the ideas of truth. This allows us to anticipate to what it becomes. But the industry persists, so do I. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Santiago, for this great presentation and also sharing with the audience the experience in Colombia and how successfully the coalition of civil society organizations could not only monitor but expose and mitigate industry interference. And like in the case in Nigeria, a lot of media advocacy and generation of evidence to show the health cost and other impacts were used. But I want to highlight in the case of Colombia, the work that GHAI did in collaboration with other partners, adding legal actions, lawsuits and other legal actions to protect the policy in all the phases, but also to safeguard the decision-making process in the parliament with this conflict of interest case that was extremely innovative across the globe. So thank you so much for the presentation. We will have time to discuss. So now, yes, we had some connectivity issues, but I am going to introduce Sanaullah Guman, who is the Director of Operations in PANA, Pakistan National Heart Association. I introduced Sanaullah you before, but we moved to the other speaker and due to some connectivity issues. So very glad to have you here with us. And the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everybody. I'm very sick that I have a problem. I'm very sorry due to this problem. Many people have suffered for this my presentation. I am thankful to the team of this Global Health Advocacy Incubator who always help us and guide us, always build the capacity of the partner with the world experience so that we can perform well. Today, I am given an opportunity to share my experience in Pakistan about the practice of the industry. I will try to tell what problem we faced in the testing SSB and what the industry did to block our way. Please, next. Defending the SSB taxes policy. Yes. Next, please. Yes. Industry interference, a key challenge for us. There are some heading from the leading newspapers, Business Recorder, and these are the Pakistan Profile, Dawn, and others. These all are showing that industry are criticized the government, FPR, and the other key stakeholder to remove the taxes from these juices in budget 2024-25. These shows all these leading newspapers. Next, please. PANA initiative to sustain the SSB taxes, support Ministry of Health to submit a proposal to FPR for increasing the excise tax on sweetened drinks in Finance Bill 2024-25. Proposed amendment in this Finance Bill 2024. This is a proposed amendment in which we demand for the 50% taxes on these SSB juices and sugary and beverage. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. Thank you very much. Continued engagement with the coalition partner, youth, religious leader, and social media influencer to mobilize public support regarding sweetened drink taxes. Yeah. Continue engagement with coalition partner, youth, religious leader, and social media influencer to mobilize public support regarding sweet drink taxes. Please, back slide, please. Back slide, please. Yeah. Next, please. Next. Yeah, this is continue engagement with the Please, later on, please, back slide, please, back slide, please, back slide, please. Continue. Yes, yeah, this continue engagement with the parliamentarian and policy makers through seminars, sensitization session, and individual meeting to advocate for increasing tax on ultra processed food. In center, our team is meeting with the president of Pakistan. In the left side, there are parliamentarians, 10 to 15 parliamentarians, which sensitize for this SSP taxes, need of SSP taxes. Then there are on left, this is also they are parliamentarian. In this, 14 parliamentarian are sensitized and convinced to increase SSP taxes. Next, please. Next, please. Yes. Continue engagement with the coalition partner religious. There are we need we use the religious leader for this and media person. Then this PANA and its coalition partner wrote letter public rallies to release demand government to increase taxes on SSP in finance bill. These are the some pictures from the rallies which we have done in capital of Pakistan for increasing taxes. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. PANA and its coalition partner wrote letter to the Prime Minister, Health Minister, Chairman FPR, and other leaders. Back. Please, back slide. Back slide, please. Placement, media engagement, placement of over 1,100 article and news story through trained journalists to support tax increase, exposing industry interference, and responding. These are the pictures of different letters which with dates. Then, please, next, please. Next, please. Next. This I have done. Next, please. Next. Yeah, this media engagement. 11. These briefing to standing committee of the finance in Senate. Please back slide, please. Back slide, please. Back. Previous slide, please. Previous slide. Yes. Briefing the chairman standing committee on finance and revenue in, please. Back slide, please. Yes, please. Here. Brief the chairman standing committee on finance and revenue in Senate gave presentation to the member of the finance committee on important of SSB taxes. It was important because beverage industry had, please, back slide. Back slide, please. Next, please. Next. Next. Please, next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Calling attention to Assembly and his Brigadier Aslam Guman, member National Assembly, have spoken on this taxes, need of this taxes on sugary sweetened beverage. Defending SSB taxes in finance bill mandatory. Please show my slide, please. Show my back slide, please. Show my back slide, please. Back slide. Back. 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 Back, please. Back slide. Please, my back slide. Hello, are you listening me? Are you listening? Back slide, please.
Yes, we are on time, so please close the presentation in the next minute or so, please. Sanaula, we are on time. Can you close the presentation, please? We are having some connectivity issues. Okay. Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Sanaula, for the presentation. I'm sorry we have some connectivity issues. I would like to highlight how you share with us in your presentation how strong was the exposure in the media among the public with civil society and different movements, the social mobilization to help industry interference and support the tax. So with that, I will open the floor for questions. We are receiving already some questions from the audience. So I am going to start with a couple of questions. One of them is specifically addressed to our Nigerian panelist. Bode, this question is for you about if you first of all, saying that it's an interesting presentation, and if you can highlight some of the results of the initiative you implemented to counter the industry interference. And there is another question, while you think that any other member of the panel could answer that, did you have in your countries public support, strong public support on the tax, and how this support was achieved and evaluated? The floor is yours, Bode.
Yes, thanks very much. I think the first outcome was that we still have the SSB tax in Nigeria today. Despite all the efforts by the industry, everything that they did, we made it practically impossible for the government to remove the tax. Second outcome is that not only that people in policy table now knows that we have to keep the tax, but the conversation now is how do we raise and sustain the tax? So at the policy level, we have been able to consolidate and we are moving forward. At the public perception level, we seize the media narrative from them. Time won't permit me to roll about 200 or more media reports that we have generated. And as I said, we are getting the youth behind us, journalists behind us, critical opinion leaders and religious leaders. We are building a movement for SSB tax in Nigeria. And that, for me, is a very great outcome.
Thank you so much. Definitely. And any response about the question we received from our colleague in Barbados about the strong civil society support, strong population support of taxes, if you could achieve that result in your country and elaborate a little bit about it? Any one of you would like to answer?
Well, so we've not conducted what you can call a scientific survey, but from the perception we are getting, from media reports we're getting, from even other civil society groups that have picked up the SSB campaign, for people speaking about it, from even policy makers, government officials now speaking publicly about SSB in Nigeria, I think we're generating the necessary public support that we needed.
Yes,
Yes, go ahead, Lotte.
I also want to chime in by sharing a bit of how, for instance, through what happened here in Colombia, and we've seen that in other regions, of civil society shifting the narrative of the industry. That's like how they create an innovative narrative that not only goes directly to react what the industry is saying, but taking some of the points that we know that are like their weakest points and creating that narrative around it so that they understand that what the industry is doing is actually protecting profit rather than protecting vulnerable communities.
Thank you, Lore. Any other comment on that, or we can move to another question? Well, I can move with another question for you. I am going to ask a couple of questions together because I find them very much interrelated. Why does your report focus on attacking the beverage industry instead of promoting individual responsibility for dietary choices? And I connect with this other question that is also focusing industry participation in the policy-making table. Isn't it counterproductive to exclude the beverage industry from the policy-making table where they could be part of the solution? What the panel has to say about these questions?
Maybe I should say something I used to say for a very long time. I'm from Africa. Malaria is one of our biggest problems. You don't invite mosquito to the table when you are discussing how to cure malaria. It's as simple as that. They created a problem. Corporations have never sincerely, whether you're talking environment, climate, been sincere about, getting solutions for problems they created. What they sit down to discuss is how to make profit, their bottom line, and we're trying to save lives. It doesn't always meet at the same time. SSB tax is actually getting the population to make informed choices. Basically, it's that when you price products to a certain level, people will begin to say, look, should I use my money on this or that? And we're trying to encourage the population through policies to make informed choices. And this has been proven across the different countries in the world that we can use taxation, we can use levies to bring down consumption, and it's going to be a win-win both for public health and for government getting resources, which again can be plowed back to public health.
Thank you, Bode. Any other reaction to these questions from the
Yes.
panel?
Yes, I would like to add just some notes. I guess with the participation of the industry in the same tables, it's important to highlight that profit is just such a strong incentive to undermine the public health that it has no sense to put a seat to an actor that has this kind of bias during the whole discussion. We know that they are aiming to the profit, so that the final interest through this discussion is to obtain this profit. So it just doesn't make sense to make them participate. And about the individual options, it's the condition that put us just in the state of health that we are right now. The individual option has systematically failed to tackle the problems of non-communicable disease. It's time to switch this idea from the individual to the structural conditions that are agents by the industry.
Exactly. Thank you, Santiago. Marta?
No, only I would like to add that who is responsible for regulating is the government. Self-regulation does not change or replace the regulation that governments have out of obligation to rights.
Thank you, Marta. I will connect a couple of additional questions we received. One is about the prices of real food that is increasing a lot. We have in the chat a question how to address that in the context where we are working in fiscal policies to discourage the consumption of these unhealthy ultra-processed beverages, but at the same time, the prices of real food is increasing. And the second question I want to connect because it's related to economic issues is related to a question addressed to you, Santiago, that is, after the shopkeepers reported a significant decline in sales, what happened later? There was any evidence about to counter that that claim, or what happened after that? So those are the two questions. Please jump in if you want to answer.
Well, I guess I jump in the hard questions because after the shopkeepers claimed that this reduction on the sales, the first thing we did was to ask to the industry how they took the measure of it, where did that data come from, and it was a quite elusive answer of the industry because this was a report feeling. And they took an aggregate indicators that trying to cause confusion. They aggregate inflation and real food products and changes on economic with the international landscape to try to justify this correlation as causality. They tried to present to the people that there was a direct relation between the healthy taxes and the inflation and the change on the product. And the first thing we did was to structure this idea. We were working indeed on it because the data that the industry has presented till the moment is not just consistent, but also it's premature to evaluate the impact of the taxes. So we're working on present to the people this in a very easy way to understand.
Thank you so much, Santiago. Very relevant. Any other reaction or reflection to these questions from the panel? Would you like to complement with any other thought? If not, we can continue with some other questions because we have a lot of questions actually. There is an interesting question about, first of all, from a colleague from Vietnam, congratulating all the panel and the team for the presentations and sharing a reflection that it seems like the industry uses the same interference tactics globally. So what are your recommendations to implement a strategy at the global level to counter the industry proactively and more effectively? Any reflection on that?
I think, yes, that's absolutely correct. The industry use same strategies. One of what I usually recommend is people can possibly read Article 5.3 of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control and the guidelines. There are also conversations that we can get in terms of having a global framework for regulating corporations, the pharmaceutical companies, and the rest of them. But while some of our problems are actually transactional, they are also local. I think there are enough tools for us to stand up and be resilient, stand for public health every time, and remind, most importantly, our government that when there is a conflict between public health and whatever economic interest that corporations may bring to the table, public health takes supremacy. I think that is something we need to hold our governments to stand for. The government should stand for public health.
Thank you so much, Bode. Yes, Santi.
Yeah, I just like to add to global problems, global answers, and these exercises of interchange, it helps a lot to build a global narrative to answer. Also, it might help us to connect these distant dots that seem that are just separate, and to reunite these causes that help us to discuss the food problems on the world. When we start to share the problems, when we denounce this playbook, we found out how to connect with the local issues too. So I guess these ideas of sharing, this interchange of experience, of lesson learned, it helps us a lot to tackle the global problem and the global strategy.
Yeah, and I also, sorry, Betty, I also want to mention that I totally agree with your point, Santiago and Bondi, in terms of how we make sure that we are not separating the local efforts that each of us are doing, how we also think about maybe some regional actions, because the industry has also variations for each of the regions. So how we also make sure that conversations and connections are being made among those organizations that have that that willing of working towards stopping industry interference. And at GHAI, we are looking forward to make those connections as well, and to support any of those global aspects. And I also believe that we need to partner with those global organizations that are also doing this work historically, so that we don't become only silos working on this important matter, but also with so much power coming from the corporations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lore. There are a couple of other questions. One is related to the policies in these countries where we have had the presentations today. If they achieve policy progress, and if any of these countries incorporated an ER mark. I can answer globally that the 3 countries that we chose to share today, Nigeria, Colombia, and Pakistan, achieved significant progress and milestones through the enactment of SSB sweetened beverage taxation in their countries. And of course, this was a collective effort from governments and civil society and academia, where the industry interference was clearly well addressed and mitigated. But no one of them included an ER mark tax by the moment. And we are working very hard to, as Bode mentioned before, to sustain the taxes, but also to double down the efforts to increase the taxes and to evaluate the impact of the taxes at several levels in all the countries where we are working in collaboration with local partners. So to close, we are going to be glad to share more answers to the questions and continue the discussion virtually. With that, we want to share some conclusions and recommendations that are reflected in the report related to 3 main domains. Protect the tax design, because we don't want any tax. We want an effective tax that really discourages the consumption of sweetened beverages, because that is the ultimate goal. To safeguard the decision-making process, keeping the industry, managing the undue influence of the industry, keeping their participation in a very transparent way, through open consultations, but not seated in the policy-making table, because there is a clear conflict of interest, and anticipate all the legal cases and challenges that we know are going to happen to challenge the policy and to threaten decision makers. And for civil society, to encourage the need to have a strong civil society coalitions, a go-to coalition that clearly can support the governments, hold the industry accountable for the damage they create, the health damage they create, environmental damage, and economic damage they create, to be fundamental support for governments to move forward with effective tax policies. You can read in more detail many other recommendations and cases, So I want to finish by saying a huge thank you to the panelists, to the GHAI team that made this report feasible and real, and to all the members of the organizations across the globe that participated today in this webinar. With that, I close the webinar and thanks everyone.